take a minute to explain how this data stuff works. So we created this test earlier. I'm just going to delete all of this and start over. So I'm just going to click on these, click delete, 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 delete. Now this page is empty. Let's go to the workflows. They got deleted automatically with the items. And here's this test data type. Click delete. So now my entire thing is blank. Now let's pretend that I want to make a website that tracks birds. One of the things that I'm going to need to do is have a table that contains all of the birds. Now I'm going to just start by calling it bird. It's really common when you are creating a new type to call it like a name, like a thing. But this is a little bit confusing. Why is this called a type? And why do I sometimes call it a table? Well, let's look here. This is a spreadsheet or a table, right? So you see how there's like a table of rows and columns. And look at how similar this is. It's got the defaults, creator, modified date, created date, and slug. Same thing here. So I can define some new columns here. I'm going to call this bird. And then what is my bird going to have? Well, how many times did I see it? I call it sightings. That's how many times I saw it. Let's have a picture. If I take a picture of it, and then let's have a type, bird type. And now what I want to do is every time I see a bird, creator will be Brenton, that's me, and then whatever the modified date is, March 28, for example, it was modified and created, no slug. Sightings, we'll start with 1, and then we'll put a picture in there, and the bird type is raven. Okay, and then later I maybe see another bird. This time it's an eagle. So I'm going to come in here, same thing. This time it's an eagle. And then later again, let's say this is the next day. This is not 328, but it's 329. I see yet another bird. This time it's a seagull. Now, what happens after this? Let's pretend that I see a raven again. So now I'm not going to create a new item because I've already got a raven here. So instead, I'm going to go in and I'm going to edit this item right here. I'm going to change the sightings from 1 to 2. And I'm going to change the modified date from 328 to 330. Okay? So what Bubble does on the back end is no more complicated than this. It's building a table with some users, the dates that the items were edited and created, and then whatever data you define. So here I've defined 3 properties or 3 columns. You could call it a column because it goes up and down across this as opposed to a row. So 3 columns, or you could call it 3 properties, sightings, picture, bird type. Okay? This is all that Bubble is doing. So we could do the exact same thing here. So I built a new table called bird, or a new type in Bubble nomenclature. And I'm going to make a new thing called sightings. And what type of value does sightings take? Just a number. So we're going to set that to be number. Okay, sightings number. Now we have picture. This is a picture. So let's find image. There it is. And then lastly, type. Is that what I called it? I called it bird type. Bird type. And this is just text because we're going to type this in. That's as simple as the database is. Now, the difference is when I need to enter a new item, that's where we need to go beyond just the database and go back to our design. So I'm going to just build this out really, really quickly. So let's start with, I'm not even going to put a text right now. I'm just going to say, here's an input. We're going to call this sightings. And we're going to make this an integer. And I'll put another input. This is called bird type. And then lastly, we're going to find one called a picture uploader. And this is going to be bird photo. Okay, and then we're going to put a button to submit it. Add new bird. Okay. this, if I click on this, you see how it renamed the element to what I put in there. I can change this to whatever I want. Input sightings, I could call this whatever. But it's good to know what your elements are called because you're going to need to refer to them later. So this is the input sightings element, this is the input bird type element, and this is the picture uploader bird photo. And now add new bird. So let's start a workflow to add the bird. This is what I was talking about when I said add a row right here. So we're going to make a new bird. So we say make changes to a thing. Nope, we're going to make a new one. Create a new thing because we're adding a completely new row. And what type of thing? Bird. And you could click on this and add them individually, but there's this nice little add all fields that'll just add all of them for you. How cool is that? And bird type, where are we getting this bird type from? Well, we're getting it from here. So remember, this is called input bird type. So we're going to get it from the input bird type. That'll give us the element. So bird type, let's find that element. Input bird type, there's the element, but we're not just going to put the element in. You see how it turned red when I clicked away from it? I clicked on this little part right here. It turned red to tell me that there's a problem, and it even showed me up here that there's this issue. It needs to be printable as text, but instead this is an element. It tells you exactly what the problem is. It was expecting text, type text, because we set bird type to be type text, but instead we're giving it an element. So it makes it red and it shows us there's a problem. So we need to not give it the element, which is, you see if you hover over it, it shows that input, not the element, but the value of that element. So click on more, say bird types value. Now if I click away, you'll see it turns blue, which means we got it. Picture, same thing. We're going to find the picture uploader value. And then sightings, we're going to say input sightings value. Okay, we're done. Let's go back here and look at our app data. So this is where we create the data types. This is where we look at the existing data types. How many columns are there? 1, 2, 3 custom plus the default ones. How many rows are there? In other words, how many items are there? 0, no items in here yet. Well, let's click on preview so we can actually do some testing and see if we can make a bird. Sightings 1, raven. Okay, so we'll click on bird photo. We'll find our bird and upload it. Watch this top thing, shows that it's uploaded. Click add new bird. Now nothing happened, but on the database we can take a look and see that it actually populated that first item. We'll go back and look at our manual. This is just Excel or Google Sheets, and we can see that it effectively did this, only instead of us having to manually edit the database, we got to use this nice interface. Now what happened is when we clicked add new bird, it didn't clear this out. So we could actually go back to our design, click on this button again, and then get into that workflow. So start edit workflow, click this, and it'll go to that workflow. Or we could just go directly to our workflow tab and find it. And we created the bird, but then we didn't clear out the fields. They're all still there. So let's clear that out. So you can look, it even recommends recommended next action, reset relevant inputs. And so now it'll actually reset those when I put the new thing in. So now let's do the next thing. What do we have? An eagle. So I'm going to say one sighting of an eagle. Find that bird. Wait for it to upload. You see this line on the top? There we go. Add new bird. And see it cleared it this time. Let's look at our database. Right there, eagle. Okay. Now we'll add the last one. One seagull. Add that bird. Look at the top for it to go all the way across. Add bird. There we go. So we've added 3 just like this. Now how do we edit? So what we were doing before in our workflow was create a new bird, create a new thing. But what if we're editing a new thing? We need to see a list of all of our existing birds, right? So we can't use this interface anymore. This is creating a new bird. How do we edit an existing bird? Well, first we need to see a list of the birds. So one way to get a list is you could use a repeating group, but those are a little bit complex. I'm going to use a drop-down. And here I'm going to call choose a bird to edit. And where are we going to get this from? Dynamic. We're going to get it from the database. Do sorry, the type of bird is choice, and then the source is do a search for. Do a search for. So when you're getting something from the database, you use do a search for. We're going to get it from the bird database, and we're just going to get any bird that matches what we've put in this dropdown. So this will give us all of the birds, and then what we want to display is the bird's type. And now that'll, when we pick from that, it'll select a particular one. I'll show you what that looks like. So now there's this new thing up here. And if we pick one of those, then it'll actually give us the ability to dynamically grab that. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put all of these into a group. And the way I do that is I click on this, and then I hold Shift, and I click on that, and then I let go. So now these are all selected, and I right click and I say group elements into a column. Now they're in a nice column. And this is where we do some fancy stuff, where this column is actually going to be a type of content. It's going to be a bird. And now what that means is that these items can get their content from their parent group, which they're in. And if I click on this and go reveal an element tree, you see on the left, we've got this group. This is called group bird. That's not a good name. This is called group edit or inputs, bird inputs. Okay, so here's sightings, bird type, picture uploader. Here's my group bird. And where does this bird come from? It comes from this dropdown. It's called dropdown, choose a bird to edit. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to say drop down, choose a bird to edit. There it is. Whatever the value is, that is the container. Now we're going to make all of these, we're going to change so that it allows auto binding. So we turn this on, auto binding, to the parent elements thing, which remember we just set that group. That's the parent element, group bird inputs. This group is the parent element. So we turn on auto binding to the parent elements thing, and we select what it is, sightings for this one, turn it on. This is bird type for this one, turn it on. This is picture. Now, because it's auto bound, oh, there's an error. What's our error? Oh, we accidentally started this but didn't delete it. There was nothing there. So we're just getting all the elements from the bird. Always got to fix your errors. Okay, now let's preview, and you'll see what happens. So these are all blank right now, but once I choose Raven, for example, there we go. Now we can see what we've got. And I can click on this to update it. Let's say 3. Oh, I don't have permissions, so there's a permissions issue. This happens all the time. So let's go to our data, birds. Look at this. Go to privacy, birds. There's no rules. So let's make a rule that says everyone can auto bind. And we'll just say when current user, we just need a condition that's always true, is, we'll say when current user is logged in, or current user is how do we say not logged in? Is logged in is false. Oh, it is not. How do I do is not logged in? I'm surprised. We'll change this. I don't know why I can't do logged out. We'll say when current user is empty or current user is not empty. There we go. So that'll always be true. Click on this, allow auto binding, check, check, check. And then we'll check it here too. So everybody can auto bind. So now we've set the permissions for everybody to auto bind. Go back to our page and reload. Raven, set this to 2. See that change made? So we'll go back to our data, go to the app data, look at the birds. Did it update it? It didn't. Why didn't it? Refresh and see what happened. Raven. It says 2. Oh, we forgot to refresh. Down here, there's this little thing that says refresh data. It's kind of hidden out of the way. But if you click on that, there we go. It updated it. So you can see it did update that. So now this is a little bit wrong. Add new bird. I'm actually editing. So what we need to do is make a UI change. Whenever this dropdown has something, this should say edit bird. Okay. So if I pick eagle, this shouldn't say add new bird. This should say edit bird. Or actually, it should just go away. Because if I click add new bird, that will run this workflow that'll actually create a new bird. So when you're editing, we just want this button to go away. So we're going to set a condition on this. So I'm going to open this up, go to the conditional, and I'm going to set a new condition. My condition is going to be when this dropdown has a value. So we'll type dropdown. There it is. When dropdown, choose a bird. When the dropdown's value, and I'm going to type empty, but you can just scroll down and find is not empty. In other words, when it's got something. Then what are we going to change? We're going to pick a property. The property is the visibility. This element is visible. We're going to check it to unchecked. So if this means it's visible, that means it's hidden. So when we uncheck it, that'll hide it. Now our UI should work a little bit better. If I want to edit an eagle, now I'm not going to make a mistake and click a new thing. 5, click away. Now, because it's auto binding, all you have to do is click away for it to make that change. Go back to our data and take a look. Refresh data. See, it changed it. Now, sometimes it's a little bit confusing for people to not have anything that saves, so they don't need to click away. So I like to sometimes make a little fake button that doesn't do anything, because it's auto binding. All you have to do is hide that. So I'm going to click on this add new bird button, and I'm going to get this conditional. Now watch this. If I right click on this gray area, I get a menu that lets me copy the condition. And then I can go to this button and then right click and paste that same condition, because it's very similar. And this time what we're going to say is the opposite. When the value is not empty, when we're going to change it to the opposite, is empty. When it is empty, then we're going to hide this. Paste it again. And when it's not empty, we're going to show it. Let's see if that works the way I expect. Seagull. Change this to 5. Edit bird. There we go. Go back to, and it's still 5. Look in our data and refresh. Seagull is 5 now. So now we've found a nice, clean way to keep my spreadsheet up to date. If it was just you keeping track of your bird sightings, a spreadsheet might be easier. But if you're going to have thousands of users and you're going to have a lot of stuff edited, it makes sense to use a nice user interface. It's much cleaner. So that's one of the things that Bubble is good for.